lots and lots of Caribbean food, Caribbean restaurants. But Shirley Chisholm became the first African American to run for Congress. Then they're actually going to be setting up a statue to her at the entrance of Prospect Park. That was recently decided. So that's going to be very unique for two reasons. One, there are not a lot of statues of women, period, in New York. There are statues of women as ideals, like virtue, but not actual people. So that is unique. And the fact that she is an African American is going to be at the entrance of one of the greatest parks in the city. That is real testament to how far African Americans have come in New York, and specifically in Brooklyn. Okay? So, draft riots. The draft riots eradicated the black population in entire areas. So, what were the draft riots? In 1863, I mentioned to you what happened in 1862, like sort of the canary in the coal mine, which might happen in Brooklyn. But in 1863, there was a draft. And the draft said that if you could pay $300, you were exempt, but otherwise, you had to go fight in the Civil War. So the group of people that had come in large numbers, because of the potato famine, as I mentioned, and so really a lot of them had only been here.
Yes. Thank you for your word. Can I just say, I know you guys are just entering, but this is one of the people who made this possible in terms of like the culture. She's been a makeup artist, stylist, you've been everything. I'm very sorry, so thank you.
Thank you guys, beautiful people. You are this generation.
I'm Amy.
Your legacy. Welcome.
You guys, Jermaine, you guys, we're in a circle. We're trying to read that.
Hey everyone! Is that we celebrate art that comes from anyone who identifies as being of African descent. So that means you could be from Ghana in Africa on the continent, you could be from Brooklyn, right? Or you could be from Colombia in South America, but you understand that Africa is your root. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we celebrate all arts across many artistic disciplines, from music to visual arts like you see here, to fashion. Contemporary art to us is wider than just painting. It's deeper than that, because as a creative people, we touch many different things and do a variety of different kind of like art practices. This exhibit in particular was an idea that I came up with last summer in August. I've been in the culture space for about 20 years as a journalist, an artist, a curator, and also a media executive. And for me, I was noticing how fashion, and I grew up in New York, if you can't tell by my accent. I grew up in New York in the 90s, and I was just seeing how streetwear has not only one evolved, but then kind of disconnected from its root, but at the same time, seeing how streetwear is actually leaving our community in a way, where it's being kind of co-opted in a sense, and the history is being forgotten. And I was trying to do my part in a sense by kind of teaching the next generation what has happened and where it came from and why it's such a big vehicle now. Essentially, this exhibit, Styles of Resistance, talks about how fashion for us and style for us was an act of resistance. It may not seem like social activism, but the way we created this vehicle and the way we kind of created the messaging behind our brands was all an act of resistance against, the greater forces that be, however you want to call it. In 1999, and from there, moved here in 2006. So gentrification had already started, but we're still one of the last standing, us and Spike Lee. For us, it's really important to, how do I articulate this? What's really important for us has always been to kind of have an open door policy for the community and be a museum without walls, so to speak. So usually in our windows, right now we're changing them. We have art on our windows so that as people walk by down the street, they can still consume art, because we believe that art should be appreciated by all and be accessible by all. Because a lot of times what happens, especially with the art space, is that people create this kind of sense of exclusivity where you're not allowed to appreciate art because you don't have access to capital or money in the same way that we do, right? So you can't buy this piece because you can't afford it, so you shouldn't be able to see it. What Makata does is the actual reverse. We take art to the people. So we have community events within our space. We offer space to different organizations free multiple times a month, so that the community activists and artists can always have a place to be. Again, going back to what we were talking about before about community centers and not having a place to go, we want to be that space where people can always come to. We also take art shows and performances and workshops to public housing because we think it's important not to forget the people and leave them behind in any way. So we do that at least once a month. We have a program called Public Exchange where, like I said before, we literally bring art to people. We also have an Artists in Schools program where we bring teaching artists to local public schools in Brooklyn to teach them about different aspects of art. And at the end of every year, they create their own pieces of work and they curate their own show. Once we leave this room, you can go into the hallway and actually see some of those pieces that they created last year.